this is one of the things that I've learned from Neil. I love that particular chord progression. Hello again, everyone. My name is Phil Cooper, and I am a songwriter on a journey to explore classic pop songwriting and how some of the techniques used by those classic pop songwriters can be put into practice in modern songwriting. Today, I'd like to talk to you about chord structures and how I use chord structures to make my songs sound a little more interesting. And by this, I'm talking about the progression going from chord to chord, not necessarily making the chords themselves away from standard chords. That is a future video. But one of the masters at making interesting chord progressions is a guy called Neil Finn. Now, Neil was in a band called Crowded House, who had a whole string of hits in the 80s and 90s. You will definitely know some of Crowded House's songs. And one of the ones that I want to give as an example right now is one of the first ones I fell in love with, and it's called Fall at Your Feet. And let me just play the little bit that I'm going to talk about. I'm really close tonight. Feel like I'm moving inside her, lying in the dark. I'm going to play it to you again, and I'm going to use a much more boring standard chord sequence that Neil could have chosen to use. I'm really close tonight. I feel like I'm moving inside her, lying in the dark. That's a standard A minor, C, F, G. Now that is a standard chord sequence. Neil doesn't do that. Neil keeps things interesting by going A minor, C, B minor, E major. Now that keeps it very interesting. I sang exactly the same melody over the two different chord sequences. And this one, the one that Neil chose, because Neil is a genius in my mind, is just elevates that melody and makes that melody way more interesting just for having those different chords underneath. I'm going to play you another one of Neil's songs. After that, I'm going to give you an example of how I use this in my own songwriting. This is called Distant Sun. Still so young to travel so far, old enough to know who you are, wise enough to carry the scars without any blame. There's no one to blame. Now what Neil does there is he keeps a fairly standard chord sequence to start with. So it's C to F, and then it goes to A minor, fairly standard. And then he breaks it a bit. He goes to D major. So you've got A minor to D major, then to F, and then down to E major. You'll notice that E major was in both of those. And this is one of the things that I've learned from Neil. I love that particular chord progression. When you're in the key of G or C, as Neil is in C, or A minor in the other one, throwing in E major in those chord sequences, it's a genius move. It works, but it kind of moves the song in a different direction, place you don't expect it to go. So I promised you I would tell you how I've put that into practice in my own songwriting. I've got a song coming out next month, and it's called Still Holding My Breath. And the chorus of it goes like this. I'm still holding my breath. I don't think I'm out of my depth, but I've still got some barriers left to push through into the blue. So I'm using the G shape. All of these examples I've been using a capo, but when I talk about the chords, I'm talking about the shapes that I'm using, not the actual chords. So I'm using the G shape. It's in the key of G. And I have G, D, and then as a standard chord, you would go down to E minor there because you've got this descending bass line. But I didn't want to do that. I thought of what Neil would do. And I did G, D, A7, which kind of just is a bit of a left field chord. Still holding my breath. And at the end, I do go down to the E minor, sorry, and then go back up to the A7 then. And a C major 7. I love a C major 7. Who doesn't love a C major 7? But that's something that I've learned from Neil and put into practice in a song that's coming out next month. When I was doing my research for this video, I looked into some of the songs that have been released over the last 10 years or so. People like Lady Gaga, Taylor Swift, Ed Sheeran, you know, the big hitters. I also kind of looked at some songwriters that are more aligned to what I do. People like a band called Flight and The Last Dinner Party, who have been absolutely huge here in the UK in the last couple of years. And all of the songs that I kind of looked into, they all had very kind of safe, what you would expect chord sequences, and very few of them had more than 4 chords in the entire song. They also had this kind of cut and paste thing where the chorus and the verse and everything, it all follows the same structure. There's another video in that, and I'll come back to that at some point. But I looked into what was the biggest hit here in the UK last year being 2023, just in case you're watching this way in the future. And the biggest song of 2023 was Miley Cyrus and Flowers. When I looked into this song, it's a pretty good pop song. I quite like it. And the chorus, I'm going to have to take the cap off for this one because it's really high. The chorus has starts off with a fairly safe, what you would expect chord sequence. So it's got A minor, D minor, G, C. So I can buy myself flowers, write my name in the sand. So it follows that. So far, so safe. But what pleased me is that at the end of the verse and at the end of the chorus, it goes na 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 na. Now, if you're watching my left hand, you would notice that in the key of A minor, it went down to our old friend E major. And it pleases me immensely that the biggest song of last year uses that very technique that I mentioned earlier. Vindication! There's just a few examples for you. I hope that you have found some inspiration in this, and next time you are writing a song and you find yourself using the same chord sequences over and over again, please just experiment. Just try playing with some different chords, because even if you've got a melody in mind, there are a few different chords that will definitely work with that melody. So don't just stick to your safe chords. Try throwing in a different one occasionally. Please let me know what you've done with chord progressions, how you keep things fresh and interesting. Please let me know if you know of any modern acts that are putting interesting chord sequences in their songs. And most of all, just get involved in the chat. I want to learn from you as much as I am hopefully teaching you. So please do that. And remember to like and subscribe, and click that notification bell if you want more of this type of content. I'm still learning, I'm still getting better. So please join me on this journey. And until next time, happy songwriting. and subscribe to my channel. Now I'm gonna go to my E major chord. Like and subscribe to my channel. Put something in the comments if you've got something to say.